All glories to Mother Ritasha. All glories to the religion of love. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to our Supreme Lord. O Lord God, please help us live out these teachings, be an example of love in the world. Jai. Okay. Continuing on our community class suggestion on the meaning of words. First word is nirvana. What does nirvana mean? Now we know it's a 90s rock grunge band. And for those familiar with Buddhism, nirvana is seen by many to be the goal of life, or the objective in which the practitioner of Buddhism hopes to attain. A state of nirvana. And in popular notions, it brings to mind a state of Zen or peace, or just this wisdom and joy kind of. That's the idea we have when we think of nirvana. Well, I'm in nirvana, right? Mother Ritasha, I mentioned before, was at a restaurant, and on the dessert menu they had an item, nirvana chocolate cake. So the idea is, oh, it's so wonderful, the cake, it'll be in nirvana, So it's understood popularly to be some lovely state of being, right? A zenith state of being, like the highest you can be high. But that's actually not what it means. Nirvana, nir means no, vana. So nirvana actually means the cessation of material desires. That's what it means. To no longer have any material desires. Which, defeats the whole idea of desiring a chocolate cake, right? So nirvana isn't a state of being, in a sense of a high or awareness like that. It just means you no longer desire anything of the material. So in Buddhism, nirvana and ahimsa were two of the primary principles taught by Lord Buddha. Ahimsa being non-violence, not to cause any unnecessary suffering. So all the highest morality, compassion, welfare to others and yourself. And nirvana, to be free from material desires. So having all your desires centered around your spiritual life. This is nirvana. So if you no longer had any more material desires whatsoever, all you desired was of the eternal ecstatic spiritual. If all you desired was God, His service, association of His devotees, etc., everything on a transcendental plane, then you will have attained nirvana. That's what it means. And the next word, liberation. Liberation. And what does that popularly mean in our cultures? Well, when we hear the word liberation, we often think of it in a socio-political manner, right? To be liberated from an oppressor, liberated from a tyrannical government or dictator. Paris was liberated by the Allies in World War II. So this is the idea we have liberation, but liberation has nothing to do with worldly politics or being freed from, let's say, being under the yoke, again, like of a government, or even being enslaved, being indentured, or being forced into servitude, being liberated from that state, being free, becoming free again. Well, according to the scriptures, it's not far off from that. But instead of being liberated from an oppressor, or liberated from, let's say, bondage in slavery, liberation in the scriptures means to be freed from the bondage of the prison house of birth and death. Basically, you become free from the samsara, the cycle of birth and death, reincarnation. That's what liberation means. Or in the Vedic scriptures, they use the word moksha. And we've covered this once before, I'll mention it again. In the Vedic scriptures, in days of old, long, long time ago, different eras, different yugas, the scriptures recommended a very gradual elevation of one's consciousness. And it outlines the 4 primary goals of humanity, or human civilization. They were artha, kama, dharma, and moksha. Artha means economic development. Everyone wants to make money, everyone wants to, build things, build up their house, build up their city, build their nation, build, make money. Economic development. Next is kama. That's sense gratification, wanting to enjoy nice things, R&R, family, fun, nice food, nice comforts, sense gratification, joy in your senses. And then dharma, that is religiosity. Engage it in something meaningful, like religious religious institutions or practices or rituals or community, for example. And then moksha, which is liberation, we just covered. And these first 3, artha, kama, dharma, trying to improve your economic situation, trying to enjoy, and trying to be very religious. These 3 are actually all on the material plane. You might think, well, what do you mean? Wouldn't the religious one be spiritual? Well, actually, no. Because this is talking about all of the dogmas, all the rituals, all of the pomp, circumstance, the sacrifices, the cultural things, like all of the external things, like which is pretty much what religion is, as you see today. People going to church, people going to temples, going to mosques, having all these holidays, festivals, fasts, things like that. For the most part, unless it's devotional service, hearing, chanting, remembering everything for God's pleasure, for the most part, everyone's going to religious functions because they want to also improve their artha and their dharma and their kama, their economic and sensory status of life. It's they're all of these they want to bring up, right? So it's also material desire. And that gradual elevation of the Vedas was to teach people how to fulfill all these essential desires of human life in a gradual and regulated means, so that you get satisfied, you enjoy, you make money, you do your religious stuff, but not in a crazy way. Be a good person, be moral, be just, make an honest living, things like that. And gradually elevate your consciousness, purify your consciousness, and then once you had your fill, then you focus in your latter years on moksha, liberation, how to then make a solution to the real problem of life, which is death and the repetition of it. But that was for a bygone era. Those were times when people lived much, much, much longer than today. 100,000 years even. Now we live maybe 100 years. And we don't have the luxury of time to elevate ourselves in such a gradual means. In fact, Srila Vyasadeva, the divine incarnation who compiled the Vedic scriptures, was a little criticized by his spiritual master, Sri Narada Muni, saying that you've encouraged people to enjoy sense gratification and economic development, all these mundane things. You've encouraged them, even though, again, it was to help them gradually come to the spiritual life, right? So, but since you've done that, people are now so focused on these things, you haven't fully outlined the direct path to God, devotional service, and the Lord's personal glories. And hence that's when his final scripture, Srimad Bhagavatam, came about, which has nothing to do with any of the 3. In fact, Srimad Bhagavatam is even transcendental to liberation. Yes, liberation, even that is not the highest attainment. No, there's even higher that we can reach beyond liberation. And liberation potentially has its limitations as well. We'll get into that in a moment. So, next word, enlightenment. What does it mean to be enlightened? Again, like the misconception of nirvana, we think that enlightenment means that you've fully awakened your consciousness or maximized your potential, you're self-actualized, you are now achieved the highest wisdom or state of being, So all of the concoctions we have in our mind that what enlightenment might be. But actually, according to scriptures and teachings of spiritual masters, enlightenment means that you have realized first that you are not the body, but are a spirit soul, and that purpose of life is to become again the devotee of God. You've become enlightened to this understanding, or this knowledge has, in a sense, a light been shone upon it, and now light bulb went off in the head. Now it's clicking, and you're realizing what this life is actually for. Not just to enjoy with the body, not just make money, not just, appear so religious and pious, but actually to make progress internally in purifying our consciousness and coming back again to the loving service of God. This is enlightenment. So one who has understood what this life is really about, the purpose of life, they are enlightened. And you might say, well, that's not much. So I guess you could say there's varying degrees of enlightenment, sure. But basically, some of the ignorance of of our mind covering our consciousness has been cleared away by the light of knowledge. You become enlightened. Aha. And you act upon it. So it's not just theoretical. So someone who's actually heard, not just from a second-hand or theoretical standpoint, but really heard this knowledge that we're not the body, and truly makes an effort for spiritual progress in life, they've been enlightened to a degree. I guess you say full enlightenment will, the next two or next three words on our list are going to explain that. So, the next word is self-realization. So, who is the self? Remember, not this body and all the designations, the outward temporary labels of the body. I am man, I am woman, I am American, Indian, rich, poor, black, white, etc., 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 all the different designations of the body. But no, the real self, the eternal you, not the body, but the living entity within the body. And self-realization means that you've come to realize, you've experienced yourself as a spirit being, not this body. Not just, again, by a theoretical standpoint, but you've actually experienced it. So you know, beyond any shadow of a doubt, you've awakened to that understanding. You've realized yourself as eternal spirit, aham brahmasmi. And this comes about through the purifying process of devotional service, hearing, chanting, remembering. You keep doing these practices, and you will become self-realized. And that's the first step in spiritual realization. So, when I said before that liberation isn't all what it's cracked up to be, that there's something beyond liberation. That is when we get to the higher and ever increasing levels of devotion and love, which liberation doesn't guarantee. And there are two types of liberation, actually. Sorry for all the noise in the background. A whole bunch of municipal trucks just popped into this yard next to us. Oh, they're all I guess shift's over, boys. They're all coming into park. Anywho, there's two types of liberation. Impersonal liberation and personal liberation. Impersonal liberation, that is when one, in a sense, merges with the Supreme. In fact, that is the goal of an impersonalist. Remember a few classes back, we talked about impersonalism and personalism. The impersonalist believes that the Supreme Absolute Truth isn't a person, but it's just a formless energy, and we're all part of that energy, and we're all part of, if not all, God. That's their understanding. Versus the personalist who knows that the formless and all-pervading energies are just one facet of the Lord's personal potencies. Right? In fact, they understand that the blinding light and energy of the universe is actually the effulgence coming off of the body of God. It's the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Lord. But the impersonalists, who are atheistic, actually, they're spiritual, they're transcendentalists, but they're atheistic. They are against the idea of serving God. Ultimately, they wish to serve themselves, thinking themselves as divine, as a god, goddess, right? And their highest level of realization would be, as I mentioned, Brahman realization, which is realizing that impersonal, spiritual, all-pervading energy and trying to merge into it, trying to become one with that. This is impersonal liberation. And this is possible. And you can be actually merged into that light, the light of all creation. Yes, you can be merged into the light. Be just an atom, a speck of light floating in the sky. Like, it's possible. In fact, this is what the impersonalists seek. And for the devotees, this is actually a very hellish state to be in. In fact, this is worse than hell. Really. You might be thinking, why would merging into the light of God be hell? Well, the reason is because in their belief, since they think the Supreme Absolute Truth is formless, and therefore they wish themselves to have no form, they get their desire fulfilled. They are then without form, and they experience eternality, they experience knowledge, but they don't experience ananda, which is ecstatic bliss. And that bliss comes from love. And when you have no form, and no form around you, there's no one and nothing to love. So it's a state of being that is loveless, which really sucks. In fact, after so many, God knows, eons or whatever, in such a state of being, the impersonalists who've achieved Brahman realization or merged into the effulgence of God, they eventually fall back down after some time. They fall back down to the material world, and they again take birth as a human on earth. And the Bhagavatam actually goes into that. They fall down in the form of rain. It's interesting. So anywho, that's not so great. Impersonal liberation. Personal liberation is freeing yourself, not by ourselves. Of course, we depend on God's mercy and the mercy of His servants, but being freed from the cycle of birth and death, being liberated from that, and situated in our eternal supreme, our eternal constitutional occupation as the servant of the Supreme. We are the servants of God. And therein is where the love is. And that love keeps expanding, because now one who has become self-realized, has the devotee who has experienced now his natural state of being, is situated in devotion, has awakened their dormant love for God, and it is ever awakening more and more, that relationship of love and service. And that's when real life truly begins, actually at the point of self-realization. And liberation is actually not even sought after by devotees, because liberation comes of its own accord for the sincere devotee on the path made straight. It's achieved automatically. So what all these impersonal transcendentalists and Buddhists think that this is the highest goal, and they struggle like anything to achieve it. Hundreds of lifetimes and struggles to achieve liberation. The devotee doesn't even care about that. The devotee gets liberation like as an afterthought, like, it's like you get a notification on your phone, like bloop bloop, oh, I got liberation, okay, well, whatever. It's just carry on, carry on in devotional service. So when we say that devotional service is the direct path, the path made straight to God, it literally is the direct path. No side shoots, no run around, no long way. It's the direct way to God. Everything else is a distraction. Even seeking impersonal liberation. Of course, for a lot of people, some transcendentalists, it is bringing them away from material, mundane life, and that is good. That seeking happiness or seeking in this life spiritual goal rather than material goal, that is very good. But unless they are fortunate to come into the contact with devotees of the Lord and hear God's message and become again devotees themselves, they'll only get so far. I like the analogy I came up with. They get to the globe of the snow globe. You shake it and it's got like a little snowy Christmas village inside, right? So nice, Santa's workshop, whatever. Well, they can get to the glass globe looking in, but they can't actually enter the snowy village with Santa. You get to the doorway, but you can't enter the door, in a sense, unless you are surrendered in loving service, situated in your real position. So self-realization for a devotee is you've cleared away a lot of junk from your heart and mind, and now it's no longer a theory that you're the spirit soul and that you're a servant of God. Now it's become an integral, awakened part of you, and it is you, and now you act on that even more so. And that's why I said real life begins when you're self-realized, because now all the other distractions are gone, and now you're fully situated even more so in service. And before that service, hearing, chanting, remembering was to purify you, just to cleanse you to get to this point. Now all that service is actually doing some real good, real pleasing work to the Lord, uncontaminated by the nonsense before. And the devotee continues on with their practice, hearing, chanting, remembering, devotional service, walking the path made straight, serving the servants of God. And you do so for the pleasure of God, for the pleasure of Guru, for the pleasure of the devotees. You just continue on, and the next stage would be God realization. Now, the impersonalist cannot achieve God realization. Only the personal devotee of the Lord can. And God realization is, as it suggests, you have realized God. You have realization, true awakened understanding of who God is. You've actually, maybe even, met God face to face. Oh yes, you can meet God. Oh yes, surely. Yes, this is God realization. And oh my gosh, the love, it's ad infinitum. To be in the Lord's presence, even just to be in His service, is so much bliss. So self-realization plus God realization, these together comprise what is known as spiritual realization. So the next word, spiritualization, is the combination of these two. So when we say that the purpose of life is spiritual realization, apologies for the noise in the background, the purpose of life being spiritual realization, this is what we mean, that first we come to know who we really are. Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit soul, and we practice to purify ourselves of all the ignorance and illusion that keeps us from experiencing our true state of eternality, knowledge, and bliss. Become self-realized. And then, carrying on further, we become God-realized. And we become situated in a state of love of God. And that is actually the highest attainment that is possible for every living entity. Love of God. That is the highest. Higher than nirvana, greater than liberation, fulfillment of complete enlightenment, the evolution of one who's become self-realized, is to be fully situated in love of God, which is our natural state of being. It's who we actually are. So, and just to give you guys a little more knowledge, hope it's not TMI here, the scriptures also describe more types of liberation, actually. There's five types of liberation actually in the scriptures. I said two, impersonal and personal, but the personal can be broken up into four more. And those are achieving the same opulences as the Lord, achieving a form similar to the Lord, achieving the Lord's company, being in His association. I forget what the next one is. So these are all actual things that a person can achieve. You can actually go to the spiritual world on any one of the innumerable spiritual planets, which God resides on them all, and you can actually get a transcendental body just like God's body. And you can have all the same opulences as God has, and be in His direct company. So these are other types of liberation. But interesting enough, pure devotees of the Lord don't even desire those things. They don't desire to merge into the Lord's energy. They don't desire to have a body like God or opulence of God or even to be in His company. And you might think, what do you mean? Like, isn't that what the devotee completely wants? Well, actually, yes, sure, but the pure devotee, the purest of hearts, greatest surrendered souls, the greatest paramahamsas, they don't desire even any of that. All they desire is to be in the Lord's pleasing service. They don't care what bodily form they have. They don't care opulences. They don't even need to be in God's presence 24/7, which, is of course blissful. But the devotee doesn't matter to them where they are. All they care is if they can be engaged in God's service. It's a complete, selfless, unconditional, great love. This is the purest state of being. So, and of course, the destination of a pure devotee is the most exalted. I mean, even beyond having form and opulence of God. I won't get into it, but the scriptures go into that, and it's the highest states of love you can't even imagine. And it's so intimate, so sweet, so kind, so loving. But so that's what all this is in a nutshell. So nirvana, liberation, enlightenment, self-realization, God realization, spiritualization. So we covered basically what are those goal words, you can say, of spirituality, what they really mean, and what the highest state of life truly is, and that is a state of love of God. So, Jai. Let me pause it here. Okay. Does anyone happen to have any questions? Yes, my wife.
Enlightenment and self-realization, we can say that both are same, because both are, we realize that we are not this body, we are a spirit soul.
My wife's asking, is enlightenment and spiritualization the same? Well,
Sorry, self-realization.
Self-realization the same?
Yeah.
Well, not exactly. So, by the definitions provided earlier, and as I have heard from different spiritual masters in disciplic succession and from the scriptures, enlightenment is again, the light bulb. Your mind has been light. There's now light. Ting. The aha moment where you understand what this purpose of life is. So that's like you become enlightened. You figure things out, and now you're going that direction. And of course, that enlightenment can be greater and greater. And the self-realization is when you've actually realized it completely, that you are spirit soul. Not just that, this is the real truth, and this is what my life really is meant for. But now you've actually walked those steps, and you've experienced it now yourself. So, in a sense, self-realization is greater than enlightenment. Yes. So the word enlightenment isn't really used so much in the scriptures, actually. We use it a lot in popular culture and how we relate to things in spiritual life, but they use more scientific terms like liberation, self-realization, God realization, these which we just cover, which have more a scientific and scientific understanding. And as I mentioned, even liberation is broken down to all these different types of liberation, right? So enlightenment, like reading, for example, teachings of Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, he said that when one hears some knowledge that they're not this body but spirit soul, and that if I chant the holy names, I can become situated again in my original position, and then he starts chanting and gives up bad habits, Prabhupada said that person's enlightened. He has been enlightened. Now he knows what's what. And now he's doing the right thing for this life, in a sense. So you can say it's your consciousness has now been shifted in a different direction now, towards the spiritual. Huh?
That's enlightenment.
Pretty much. So by that definition, now I know we use the word a great enlightened master. You've heard me say that a lot, right? Just because of just how we understand the word enlightenment. But technically, because you are on the path and you're practicing and you understand, you're enlightened.
So first enlightenment happened and then self-realization, or first self-realization happened and then God.
That's why I mentioned there can be I guess we can say there's varying degrees of enlightenment. I guess you can say, or realization. So yes, enlightened, you figured out the purpose of life, and now you're on the path. You've been enlightened.
First ahane happened. First and then enlightenment.
Ahane?
Uh-huh.
Is that a new word?
First
Ahane.
First enlightenment happened, and then we work towards to get
Self-realization. Yes. Enlightenment, you figured out, you've been enlightened with the knowledge of God's message, and now you're walking the path made straight. And then you walk, you practice, purify, and then you can become self-realized. And then you keep walking further than God realized. basically. And that's according to as I have heard from the great masters, which, again, as I said, so enlightenment isn't really as big as we think it is, according to scriptural definitions. Of course, in our popular understanding, in our culture today, enlightenment does seem like the biggest thing you can achieve, but actually it's love of God.
Is it the same thing that when we are doing this, something within ourselves saying, like telling us the truth?
Yes, yeah, it's like that.
That's the thing. Then we start doing spiritual practices, and then become the self-realized.
Yes, it's like that situation in dialogue where someone's confused, like, let me enlighten you, my friend. So exactly that word. Let me enlighten you onto the situation. Let me give you some of the real facts so you know what's really going on. And that's what it means. It means you've heard spiritual knowledge, in a sense. And of course, that hearing gets greater and greater the more you purify, the more you're transformed, the more you practice. There you go.
I thought enlightenment is very something.
Want to come closer? Or bring your chair closer?
I said this, describing the definitions of each word is very helpful, because I always thought that enlightenment is something really huge gonna happen, and then it's going to be same as self-realization. Now I know the difference.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's semantics. Potato, tomato, tomato. It doesn't really matter. I mean, we're going over these definitions of words classes because it was interesting in the community, half of which didn't show up today. So, yes, and we can still use that word enlightenment if you know, as you see fit. But that's why we say the purpose of life in the Religion of Love book, as Mother Tasha teaches, she doesn't say it's enlightenment, she says spiritual realization, which has a more scientific, exacting meaning to it, which we just broke down. Welcome. Meet or Yeti, any comments or questions, guys?
Nothing for me. It's pretty straightforward.
No. All glory to Mother Tasha and great masters before us and the message of God in the scriptures.
I like the definition of nirvana. I didn't know about that.
Oh yeah, it's that's all it is. Freedom from material desires. That's it. Which that too is also, like liberation, a natural byproduct or a side effect of devotional service. So nirvana, liberation, freedom from birth and death, these things happen automatically for a devotee. That's why, again, say it really literally is the path made straight to God. There's no side turns, no not weighing you down with side quests. You get everything. When you attain love of God, you get everything. And like it says, for one who has God, for one who owns nothing but has God, they actually lack nothing. When you have God, you have everything. So to be in a state of love of God, all lesser achievements automatically fulfilled, because love of God includes everything. Everything. So one who achieves nirvana, cessation of material desires, that's not a permanent status. That can change. Someone who's achieved liberation, achieved freedom from the cycle of birth and death, situated in knowledge of their spiritual nature, that they're not material, that is not permanent unless you keep going further in devotional service. Because there's every chance of falling back down to material life. And that happens someone who's achieved nirvana, who's achieved liberation, achieved Brahman realization, as I mentioned, unless they come to devotion, they fall back down. And so there's been many examples of impersonal sadhus, impersonal holy persons, who they became free from material desires, nirvana, right? But then after some time, I guess they got bored and they start doing philanthropy work. They start doing humanitarian work, building hospitals, building schools, things in their name, da-da-da-da-da. So, and they get more caught up into worldly social affairs. So, they regress. And I know that's, hospitals and schools, that's nice. And yeah, it is pious stuff. Right? But it's not helping people get free from the cycle of birth and death. It's not helping get people closer to love of God. So, it's better than a lot of other mundane things that go on in this world. But again, another side thing instead of the direct way to God. So they're temporary. Everything you can achieve in life, no matter how grand or how much you can enlighten, if it doesn't bring you closer to the love of God, it's ultimately to waste. Ultimately. Because the results of such will be they'll be reversed. Yeah, there's the highest planet in the material world, Brahmaloka or Siddhaloka. You can achieve that, and great yogi or transcendentalist can achieve that highest planet, right? And they can live such a long life. Oh my gosh, life lasts as long as this universe lasts, right? But if they don't come to love of God, they never cross over to the other side, to the spiritual world. The opposite side of the Viraja river, the spiritual river that separates the material and spiritual sky. They can get right to it, right to the bank of that river, but they don't actually cross it. The only way you can cross over to the spiritual world, the actual land of birth, freedom from birth and death, the land of no anxieties, the Vaikuntha, is through love and devotion to God. There's no other way. Again, that's our natural state of being. We're all lovers of God. I just forgot it. That's how we are in our real home. And that merging with the Supreme, that becoming one with God, one with the energy of God, that is actually Maya's biggest and ultimate trap. Maya, the illusory energy of the world, to trap you into thinking that you are God and you are of the Supreme, and gives your head puffed up. Whereas the devotee, their head gets lower and lower in all humility, offering obeisances and love to the feet of God. It's different. The devotee head goes down while their heart goes up. Whereas the impersonalists, their head goes up, but their heart sinks down. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. It just came to mind just now. But it's kind of like that. And I'll tell you guys something interesting. To become, again, a pure devotee of the Lord, pure devotee, to that state I mentioned, which is not even desiring any of those types of liberation, not even desiring to live with God in the spiritual world, just wanting to be in His service, to please God and help others come home to Him. To be a pure devotee of God, the Lord is so pleased with such a surrendered, meek, humble, lovely servant, that person, this family, they're all become blessed to achieve liberation simply because of being born in the same family as a pure devotee. Really. It says actually 50 generations in the past and even 50 generations in the future of your direct family members, of a pure devotee, will achieve liberation simply by the mercy of God, because of him being so pleased with his pure devotee. Isn't that interesting? So, when we said before in classes that the greatest thing you can possibly do is to become again the beloved lover, servant, devotee of God, and become spiritually realized, you can see that even the family that holds you back or distracts you, or maybe, as Jesus said, become your greatest enemy, or Mother Teresa said, greatest challenges, if you can finish the work, become a pure devotee. Of course, the work is never finished because love is ever expanding, but you come to that state of pure love of God, all your family members, even the naysayers, they will achieve liberation in their next lives. So, you really do the greatest good for everyone by becoming spiritually realized. Now, remember, as we said, liberation doesn't always mean what it's cracked up to be, that you could still fall down even being liberated, as I just covered. So there's no guarantee that even being liberated, you'll make it all the way home to the spiritual world. You could still have a fall down. But still, it helps to be liberated. It does bring one a whole lot closer. But now you're in the ballpark. So it's pretty cool. Anything else? My love, Meet, Yeti, y'all good? All right then. Okay, we'll end there, and then next class we'll jump into the mind. The next on the list. So, all glories to Mother Natasha, all glories to the religion of love, all glories to the assembled devotees, and all glories to our Supreme Lord. Jai.